All right, Jesse on fire. Welcome back to the channel. Well, geez, this is the first time I've actually formatted a video in a, in a sensical way rather than just picking a couple topics and then talking about them for 30 minutes straight, right? So a formatted video, who would have ever thought that I would have been able to do this? But someone came up with it, texted it to me, and they're like, dude, you should do this. And I was like, that's a great idea. And as you, I'm sure, have figured out since you clicked on the video, this is going to be a top 10 list of fighters who have capitalized on the COVID lockdown and the new environment that we find ourselves in, right? So basically the first event being in May with Gaichy versus Ferguson, and we're going to start there up until current, and we're going to lay out the top 10 fighters who have seen their star rise immensely in this new environment. Now, before I get started, if you like the content, subscribe and ring the bell. Most people who see my channel for the first time, if it's MMA, usually pretty, MMA fans respond well to my style for what, you can just tell I'm a huge fan. And also, obviously I understand the game and I'm clever, nice to look at, just lots of reasons to subscribe. So why don't you do that? And right now, while you're thinking like, Jesus, this guy's really full of himself, ask my subscribers. Every one of them had that reaction. And now they're like, I love this fucking guy because I love you guys too. Okay. A dude can be cocky and simultaneously love you guys just as much. I've got so much love. I got it for all you guys. So anyway, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell if you like the video. So getting into it, here's the truth. It's actually a top 12 list. All right. Because when I made the list, I forgot about basically one of a top 3 guy. And so I'm jamming him in there, but I want to talk about all these guys. So I'm going to have a tie for second place. I'm just going to lay that out in advance. All right. And also we have a tie for second place. So it's a top 12. I'm sorry, 10th place. So it's actually a top 12. All right. So getting right into it, number 10, we are giving to Darren Till and Robert Whittaker, because both those guys, in my opinion, won. Because what this top 10 list is about is who has advanced their career in a meaningful way during COVID, or the top 10 people who have seen their star rise during this COVID lockdown. Okay, and so here's the deal: Whittaker was coming off a very vicious knockout loss, right? You never know how a guy's going to respond to that, and he was fighting a very, very game opponent in Darren Till, who, by the way, he is a monster. Even at middleweight, he's huge, dude. I've never been watching a middleweight fight with Robert Whittaker in it and thought to myself, wow, Whittaker's a small welterweight. Never. Have you guys? He's fought Yoel Romero 18 times. He's fought all the best guys. And I've never been looking at the octagon and been like, wow, Robert Whittaker's a small middleweight. Obviously, he came up from welterweight, but still, that's never been a thing that I thought. And when he was in there with Darren Till, I was like, oh my gosh, Darren Till's a monster. He's huge. Darren Till's he's gigantic. So the gorilla still fits, even at middleweight. But anyway, the point is, and I'm going to have to really temper myself, because if I go through all 10 of these and I just do what I normally do, everyone's going to know this, that I would easily be able to talk for 3 hours on this, all right? But basically, Till and Whittaker, this is one of those very, very rare situations where both guys did win, right? So Whittaker's coming off a knockout loss to Israel Adesanya. How's he going to respond? He's got a very strong opponent, and he won, and he looked great doing it. Darren Till, one of these very rare scenarios where you can lose and still win, because Darren Till was, his star went like this at welterweight. And then he got knocked down a peg, in a title shot that maybe he wasn't quite ready for. Then he got knocked out by Mosfadal, right? And Mosfadal's ascension started, but that really knocked Till back down. So Till goes to middleweight and then fights the scariest guy in the division, arguably at the time, Kelvin Gastelum, coming off of one of the biggest wars of all time against Israel Adesanya, who is now considered the best middleweight in the world. And Kelvin just knocked him around. Israel had to dig real deep to be able to even stand up through that fight. He almost died. He said, well, he didn't say he almost died. He said he was ready to die in that 5th round because he was that beat up. He looked like a train ran over his face. And Darren asked for Gastelum. That was so gangster. Now, Gastelum obviously has slid since then, and so it kind of minimizes that win a little bit because, he gets finished in the 1st round by, Hermanson. And so Till is still trying to establish, what is he in the middleweight division? Because he beats Gastelum, but it's not like he knocks him out. He does what he does. He's a technical, surgical striker. He doesn't want to take punishment. He doesn't like getting hit. Not because he's a pansy, because he sees mixed martial arts as a chess match, as a test of skills. And so, if you're in there, if you look at the fight game that way, it's not like these guys go in and they're like, they don't treat it like a fight where it's like, I'm going to get hit, I'm going to hit him, which is really exciting to watch. That's just not Darren Till's style. That's not how he views the game. But he beat Gastelum, but you don't really know what to make of that because neither guy really got super hurt. Fights Whittaker, who was the champion 5 seconds ago until he lost to Israel, and he won the first and fifth round decisively. And, he lost the middle rounds. He lost, but he won. Right? Because he's now established himself as a 100% legit middleweight contender, a top guy in the world. So he won. So did Whittaker. I mean, in terms of their careers. So, I love both these guys. So I found that outcome very satisfying. All right. So number 9 is Kamara Usman. All right. So Kamara Usman, obviously, if you guys watch this channel, you know that I kind of gave him some shit about how he fought that Mosfadal fight, but only because I'm a massive Mosfadal fan and I really wanted Mosfadal to win. And in reality, Usman fought that fight exactly how any smart person who is looking to win would fight. Why would he stand up and just trade with a guy whose entire, the reason why Mosfadal is elite is because he's so elite on his feet, right? So you take him down, obviously. I mean, that is mixed martial arts. So, even though I gave him shit, it wasn't because I think he's not a smart fighter. And certainly, given that pay-per-view sold 1.3 million pay-per-views, certainly majority of which probably because Mosfadal came in. But nonetheless, 1.3 million pay-per-views, and he performed in dominant fashion. And now he not only won the belt off of someone who was considered to be the best welterweight, certainly of the modern age since GSP, and decisively beat him. Then he defended against Colby, knocked him, broke his jaw, knocked him out in the 5th. Now he defends against Mosfadal, who had all the hype in the world. So now he's starting to look like a very dominant champion, right? Now, I have made crystal clear, I think that the worst nightmare matchup for him is Gilbert Burns. And that's because Gilbert Burns is a monster on his feet, just like Mosfadal, and simultaneously you can't take him down. So that whole angle, the angle that you took with Mosfadal, that ain't going to work against Gilbert Burns. It's just not. He's a world champion in jiu-jitsu. And that's the thing. I think it was very telling, and I'm going to try not to dive down rabbit holes and do tangents on this, but just a little bit of context there, is I think it was very telling when Kamara Usman found out, agreed to fight Burns, he immediately left the camp, and he went up to train with Trevor Whitman. And what is Trevor Whitman known for? Striking, right? He goes, I'm going to get out, because, listen, unless you are a member of the Black Zillions team, you have no idea what those guys' training, like what it looks like when those guys square up in training. It's possible Gilbert Burns has been smashing Kamara Usman all around the octagon for years, right? And everyone kind of knew, like, man, this is the real guy. Like, this is the guy. So Usman, as a smart champion, left that environment. He went up and he trained, Trevor Whitman, who's a striking specialist. In my opinion, the best MMA striking coach there is. Not that I've gone around and sampled all of them, just from a matter of results and listening to him talk, listen to his philosophy and listening to the people who he's coached and watch their results, right? Anyway, so Kamara Usman, that is our number 9. Number 8 is Figueiredo, the new 125-pound champ, because guess what? 125 pounds has been dead on arrival since it started, right? You had DJ, Demetrius Johnson, who was the champion forever and basically looked unbeatable until Henry Cejudo beat him. And Henry Cejudo, listen, I'll give a little bit of context there too. So Henry Cejudo, who I also just realized I left off this list, but you know what? He retired, so it doesn't matter. So he should be off. But Henry Cejudo, he lost to DJ. Then he came back, and that first fight when he took his karate stance, I literally texted all my guys who really know MMA. I texted all of them, and I was like, he's gonna be the champion. He looked so good in that first fight when he was in the karate stance. I can't remember who it was against, but he looked amazing, knocked the dude out, and I was like, oh wow, this is a different ball game. Like, there's never been a guy who moves that fast, that surgical on his feet at 125. So, he ended up beating DJ in a chess match. I thought he won, and then he defended against TJ, but then he went up to 135, and he immediately went up to 135, won that belt, and then defended that belt. So 125, DJ couldn't draw. He couldn't draw. He just never wanted to play the game. And as soon as Henry Cejudo started playing the game, he left the division, right? So 125 was like this vacancy that was likely to. Honestly, if someone didn't arise, they probably would have shut that division down. And guess what? How about now? How about now when you have a guy who is a murder machine? Okay, anybody who does not watch my channel and has not done any research on this guy, you guys realize this guy has the highest finishing percentage of anyone that holds a belt currently in the UFC, male or female. He has a higher finishing percentage than anyone who has a championship belt currently. The only people who have a higher percentage of finishes than him are Conor McGregor, Justin Gaichy, and technically Gaichy has an interim belt, but Justin Gaichy, Conor McGregor, and Francis Ngannou. Those are the only people in the entire UFC who have a higher finishing percentage than him. Except for, actually, I take that back. What's his name that's fighting this weekend also? Shimaev. So, wait, not Shimaev. What am I talking about? Edmund. That's fighting Derek Brunson this weekend, who I've done a lot of video on. As a matter of fact, if we did this video on Sunday, I have a feeling that he would be on this list because I think he's going to walk through Derek Brunson and people are going to go, oh, wow, Shabazian. So anyway, Figueiredo, go watch his highlights, go look at his record. He is a killing machine, right? Killing machine. And now 125 is exciting. Anyone going to not watch him? Like the fact this lockdown has been amazing for UFC because it's enabled, like it's the only sport on, right? So people are watching and they've had incredible performances among the people who hold the belts. We're like, it is an exciting time for this company. I'm very, very bullish on the UFC overall. And Figueiredo is a great addition there. Now, right in line with that, Peter Yan. So Triple C steps out. They need to figure out a champion at 135. I think UFC handled that absolutely brilliantly. As a matter of fact, I should probably put UFC. You know what? I take it back. UFC is number one on this list, but you know we'll keep to the format. But Peter Yan. So UFC had that. They basically had that 135 pound showcase, which was genius, right? Triple C bounces. Maybe he's playing a little bit of negotiation, whatever. And Dana's like, all right, well, let's just line up that entire division. Because that division, prior to that night when they had Cody fight and O'Malley fight and Peter Yan fight, all those guys all in the same night. Wait, Peter Yan did fight that night, right? Or did he not fight that night? I don't know, whatever. When they lined up all the 135 pounders, right? And it was like, let's see who the contenders are. That was so smart, man. It was so smart because it's like, okay, Triple C's out. Well, then, it always had this feeling at 135 that there was like TJ Dillashaw and then like, it was kind of like, oh, well, there's not really anyone else in that division. Like for whatever reason, it felt like TJ was like this really dominant champion because he had just been fighting Cody, and it was just like there's this huge this huge rivalry at the top, and you don't even look below that. So it's kind of like I don't even know what's going on with that division. And then little did we know, 135 pounds is stacked with knockout artists from number 1 down to number 15. Everyone in the top 15 is a knockout artist at 135, which is crazy, right? Those are little guys, and they just knock each other out. 125 pounds, that was the whole problem. You never had any finishes. 135 pounds is just they're all murder machines. And Peter Yan emerges. He gets a title shot against, a questionable opponent, given the quality of that division now that we know, right? Like now, oh yeah, so he didn't fight that night. But now that we know how stacked that division actually is, with Aljamain, Cody Garbrandt, Sean O'Malley, and then all the, Munoz, all these guys, I don't have it in front of me, but literally all the way down, all dangerous, all knockout artists. And, and so Peter Yan emerged. He's the belt holder. It's exciting. I will always be excited to watch him fight. Okay, number 6, Mike Perry. Okay, so Mike Perry has, first of all, he is. So one thing that I'm going to talk about, what we're talking about in this list is people whose star has blown up during COVID, right? Like they've become bigger stars. They've done a lot for their career during this thing. Now, Mike Perry, whether intentional or unintentional, is amazing at getting press, right? I think it's halfway unintentional. I think he's just being himself. He can't help it. And people are just like, I can't look away from this guy. He says he fights Mickey Gall with no team. He just has his new girlfriend in his corner. It's genius. So, I don't know about genius, actually. Genius if what your goal is to get press, right? And if he wins, then he really gets a lot of press. It's like, yeah, I didn't even need a team. She brought me my water. She brought me my bucket. Then he gets in a fight outside the cage, which obviously I did a video on. This is my biggest video in the last 3 months, that's for sure. Got like 65, 70,000 views or something like that. I don't know, I haven't checked. But, obviously that was not an intentional, let's get some press. But there is no press that's bad press as long as you don't hit a woman, you don't like crash your car drunk, whatever. Like if you get in a fight outside the octagon and it's justified, like it was with, Mike Perry, in my opinion. I mean, that guy pressed him. The guy put his hands on him. If it's even halfway justified, it's not like Conor punching an old man in a bar, right? Like if you can defend your actions, then press is, press of you fighting out. It's not bad press if you're Mike Perry, right? It would hurt the image of a lot of guys, just not Mike Perry. So next time Mike Perry fights, you think more or less people are going to watch it than last time, right? Dude, and everyone's going to watch. If Mike Perry, if they put Darren Till against Mike Perry would be fighting at 185 for the very first time, completely unjustified that he would get that shot, and everyone would watch, right? So yeah, that's Mike Perry. So now we're going to get to the top 5, which is actually going to be the top 6, because like I said, I forgot about someone that's going to get injected and tied for number 2. So number 5, we have Cody Garbrandt. Cody Garbrandt, who, in my opinion, is one of the 2 biggest stars at 135 pounds. One of the other ones is going to be in the top 5. But he's just got that it factor where, there are just some people that just have it, You know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? People who just kind of have it. So yeah, Cody's one of them. And he always has been, and he just has charisma. He's really exciting to watch. He's going to go in there and he's going to bang. Someone's most likely going to get knocked out. And even if they don't, it's going to be really exciting. Like when he fought Dominic Cruz and he won a 5-round decision, that was a really exciting fight. He's talking shit the whole time. He was having a good time. And, his career hit a skid because he was too emotionally invested in that TJ Dillashaw matchup. He knocked him down. He would have won that fight had the fight not got, had the end of the first round not ended. And then he went out overconfident. TJ knocked him out. He went in emotional to the second one. TJ knocked him out. TJ probably, on 18 different, pharmaceuticals that were helping his career or helping his performance, but it is what it is. And then he had a total psychological meltdown in his next fight. I know I've talked about that a bunch on this channel if you guys watch this consistently, but I've never seen anyone do that before. That was of every kind of mental lapse I can think of in the octagon that I've ever seen. I've never seen one like that. Where you could just tell, you could see exactly what was happening, right? You saw, it wasn't just that he had a psych meltdown. You knew exactly why. You knew exactly what was happening. And it was like watching a slow motion car crash, if you're a fan of Cody like I am, where he's coming off 2 knockout losses, which are his first 2 professional losses. So he wants a win so bad, right? He hurts Munoz, and it was like he wanted to knock Munoz out so bad that he just completely forgot any form of defense whatsoever. He just started swinging wild like crazy with no control, and you were like, oh my God. Now I saw it before it happened. I'm like, oh my God, he's gonna get knocked out. What the hell is he doing? Back off, knocked out. So, he knew it. He called it out immediately right after. He switched camps. And again, anybody who watches this channel consistently can testify. I watched an interview with him before his most recent fight against Asuncio. We're talking 4, 5, 6 weeks before that fight. And I saw this interview and he was talking about switching camps and what they had talked to him about in terms of striking and how he was approaching the game. And I was like, oh, he's going to win. I was like, that, usually a guy coming off 3 losses, especially with this, a mental thing that he did in the last one, you can't be very confident in his next performance. I knew he was going to win. I said it on the channel. I was like, dude, I've never been more bullish about a guy coming off 3 knockout losses ever in my entire life than I am about Cody. He said all the right things. And that's one of the reasons why he has that it factor, is because he's super genuine. You can read that he's telling you the truth all the time. I ham it up on here, and but I don't think anyone who watches this would ever accuse me of being disingenuous, right? I mean everything I say. And if I don't mean it, I'm being very clear that I'm not being serious, right? You're getting exactly what you see, and that's exactly what it's like with Cody. That's why I knew he was going to come back and do well. All right, so number 4, Gilbert Burns, right? So Gilbert Burns basically went from a totally unknown entity, right? Where people were like, I don't know. This literally when he was fighting Tyron Woodley, people didn't even know who he was. They're like, who's this Gilbert Burns guy? Now, again, anyone who watches my channel knows, right after the Damian Maia fight, I was like, this is the guy who's going to be the champion. Watch. I called it right after the Damian Maia fight. I was like, this is the guy who is the sleeper dark horse monster in that division. And everyone was kind of like, it's Damian Maia. What do you mean? I was like, just look at the X's and O's. Watch that fight. Watch how good he is on his feet. Okay. when you have a guy that's that vicious on their feet with knockout power, and then you find out, oh, and by the way, you can't take him down, right? Like, it's not, this is 1 + 1 = 2. Okay, imagine if Conor McGregor was a world champion in jiu-jitsu, right? Like, just imagine that, where it's like, oh, and he had 5-round cardio like Gilbert Burns. You're like, no, really, you can't take it. Like, you can't take him down. You can't clinch with him. Can't go to the ground with him at all. You are stuck on your feet with Conor McGregor. Oh, and by the way, he's going to be just as fast in the 5th round as in the 1st round. Who's going to beat that? Who's going to beat Conor if that's the case? Answer: fucking no one. Okay, no one. And that is what I see when I look at Gilbert Burns. I mean, he's not quite as good as Conor on his feet. At least we can't say that yet, right? Because, he didn't. Anyway, we can't say that yet. I would argue that Conor is the best mixed martial artist striking of all time, basically. I mean, if you really look at it, the guy, he has literally knocked out basically every single person that he's ever fought, except for Nate Diaz, who you can't knock out, and Khabib, who took him down and beat him up. But on the feet, he has almost a perfect record of knocking every single person out that he's fought. So that's what I see when I look at Gilbert Burns, and I look at the rest of that division, and it's like, okay, Usman, you take away the ability to take someone down, that is a rough matchup, man. A rough matchup. And watching him fight Mosfadal, they had exchanges on the feet. Now I'm even more confident that Burns is going to win that fight. Because some people just they don't look like they can move, it's like I don't know what it is. It's like maybe it's a quick twitch muscle thing, but it just doesn't look like they can, they're not fast, they don't have that fast movement from here to here or here to here, or when they, when they kick. I don't know. By the way, yesterday I demonstrated how you generate power in a hook. Right? Like a hook. I was you twist off and then you're coming up here and it's here to here. Some guy put in the comments, he's like, hey dude, don't ever show how you punch ever again. That's hilarious. I was like, oh yeah? If by hilarious you mean every person who's ever officially gotten in the ring with me who went unconscious, then yeah, fucking hilarious. Okay? I might be shit at a lot of things. Throwing fucking hooks in boxing ain't one of them. Okay? Anyway, but, so yeah. All right, so number 3, Jorge Mosfadal, all right? So Jorge Mosfadal is number 3 because, look, he lost, but he took on the UFC in the middle of COVID as it relates to pay. He negotiated and obviously I'm a huge Mosfadal fan, but I don't think that I'm being biased here at all. I will say, actually unequivocally, that I'm not being biased here, right? And because we're talking about jump in career, right? And you could say that Mosfadal was already a star before COVID, but Mosfadal took on the UFC, went all, really railed on them about the pay, and ultimately he won and sold 1.3 million pay-per-views. Dude, his payday on that it was probably astronomical. And so even though he lost that fight, he's still right there at the top. He's going to get another, his next fight will be a huge fight. It'll probably be against Leon Edwards, most likely. And if he wins, then he'll get the next title shot again, right? Depending on how Colby and Tyron Woodley goes. That's the group at the top. You got Leon Edwards, Jorge Masvidal, Tyron Woodley, Colby, Usman, Burns. And Tyron Woodley's not really in there, actually. Tyron Woodley, at this point, is a stepping stone. Unless he annihilates Colby, that's the only way that he can get back in the top 5. Because right now, top 5 is pretty solidified. So, you got to put Masvidal up there. Now, number 2 is a tie, okay? But first, we're going to talk about the one that I forgot somehow, okay? Number 2 is Justin Gaichy, right? So Justin Gaichy, the reason I forgot is because I that was so long ago, I forgot that that happened during lockdown. It was the very first COVID lockdown fight, right? And, honestly, he comes in on 2... Actually, I just really wanted to make this last guy number 1. In reality, you easily could make Justin Gaichy the number 1 guy, right? Easy. He came in on 2 weeks' notice, coming off 4 first-round knockouts, so obviously, he's not. It's not a mystery that this guy's for real, but he was not considered in the league of Ferguson and Khabib, period, right? There was Khabib and Ferguson and everyone else. And Gaichy came in there and obliterated Tony Ferguson. He didn't just win, he obliterated Tony. And obliterated him in the exact way that Tony's obliterated everyone else, right? And that's the thing, if you really think about how you analyze fights and how you look at fighters, etc., and you kind of think about the way that the way that you interpret fights. A lot of times, like as an example, when Khabib destroys Conor, right? You're looking at it like, okay, well, that's because Conor is not as strong he's got cardio problems and he's not as good on the ground as he is on his feet. So Khabib matches very well up against that, and he exploited Conor's weaknesses, right? It's a different thing when someone goes in and a guy is considered elite for a specific reason, and this person beats them at that, right? Like this person is absolutely top of the heap at this. And then you go in there and you beat them right down the center. You run directly into that fucking train and you annihilate it at its own game. That's what Gaichy did to Ferguson, right? So Gaichy obviously now is in the top 2 in the division, and he's going to work it out with Khabib. So that's why he's in the top 3. Number 2, Sean O'Malley, obviously, right? Sean O'Malley is now arguably in the, top 5 biggest stars in the UFC. He's incredibly exciting. He's getting a big step up in competition next month. Only in a couple weeks. But there's no indication that this guy's going to slow down. No one's ever heard him. He's just walked through every single person that he's fought. I really hope that he continues to do that. But O'Malley his star has shot through the roof in the last 4 or 5 months, right? I don't even really have anything to add to that. But number 1, I've been very excited to talk about this, all right? So number 1 has emerged in literally the last week, okay? The number 1 guy in terms of you were here and now you're here. And I want to talk about him because he's done it himself. I have never seen this is a young guy, okay? So it's Kamza Shimayev, all right? I have never seen a young guy have such strong command of how to play the fight game, right? Not just the fight game, okay? It's not just about going in and winning your fights, Demetrius Johnson. It's about the hype. It's about building stories, narratives in the press, because ultimately people want to watch fights when they understand the stakes, when they understand what's going on underneath it. Chael Sonnen talks about that all the time. Build a story. Like, why do I care about the outcome of this fight, right? Like, obviously, Dana said this a million times, that if human beings are attracted to violence, like if 2 90-year-old men are there, banging it out in the street, most people are going to stop and watch, right? And these are the most finely tuned athletes in the world that, to fight. But, okay, when you have this amount of fights to watch in this particular paradigm where it's like, okay, this guy's going to come into the octagon, this guy's going to come into the octagon, they're going to fight, or this girl, whatever. If you want to make your fights matter more than those others, give people a reason why your fight matters, right? Like, it's like why is this a big deal? Why is this particular fight a big deal? That's what the greats are great at, right? So Kamza Shimayev fights twice in 10 days on Fight Island and annihilates both opponents, okay? Annihilates them. Now, is that big a deal on its own? He got a first round finish and he was like, yeah, I'm still here. I'll just fight again. And they're like, okay, great, cool, perfect. That works. That fills a gap in our schedule. That fills a gap in our schedule. He walks through the guy, but then he gets on the microphone and basically states that he's going to annihilate everybody. He wins twice. He says he's ready to fight the next day. Then he gets on Twitter and he calls out Conor, gets in the press conference, calls out Conor, okay? Then he gets on Twitter yesterday and he said he could beat Mosfadal, Diaz, and Conor all in the same night, okay? I saw that tweet and I was like, genius. Let me rewind. Before that, he told a story about flying to Ireland to fight Conor years ago. He's 8-0 now. What was he in 2017 or 2018 when Conor fought Khabib? He saw what Conor said about, his way of life, and he flew to Ireland to fight him and got stopped by customs. Okay, if that's true, that's amazing, right? If that's true, that is amazing. It's just it's so fucking crazy. And if it's not true, it's even better, because that means he completely understands how to manipulate the media, right? He's like, yeah, I actually flew to Ireland to fight Conor. Why don't you guys write a story about it? Put my name next to Conor McGregor's name all the time. Then he does the tweet that says he could take on Nate Diaz, Mosfadal, and Conor in the same night. What do those 3 guys have in common? What is it? What do they have in common? Oh, the biggest 3 stars in the UFC? Right, exactly. And so he called the 3 biggest stars in the UFC out in one tweet, which demonstrates he gets it. He's not just stumbling on Conor McGregor. Like, he's not just like, oh yeah, Conor talked bad about, Islam, so I'm going to, talk bad about him. That tweet, when he talked about Mosfadal and Diaz also, that shows this kid understands the fight game completely. You manipulate the media. And this is the thing. In the modern age, you have this group of people that are coming out of this group of Muslim fighters that are bosses, right? Killing machines. Islam Makhachev, Khabib, that whole crew, right? There's a ton of guys that are vicious, right? But none of those guys have had this, right? Like there hasn't been a guy that comes from that camp that understands how to manipulate the media like this, to get their name put next to the biggest stars in the UFC so that everyone reads, because everyone's going to read the article if it's about Conor. Everyone's going to read the article if it's about Mosfadal. Everyone's going to read the article if it's about Nate Diaz. So he gets it already. Everyone knows who he is. And he's my number 1 guy. So he has won in COVID, top spot, although Gaichy could easily be there too. But anyway, that is what I got. So if you like the content, subscribe and ring the bell. This is what I do all day. I do these videos every single day. By the way, I do have literally the best interview of all time with Dean Lister. Okay, that is coming. And I haven't put it out yet because I just haven't had time to edit it down because I got him to tell stories about shattering a member of a drug cartel's arm in a street fight with guys breaking bottles on his head. I got him to tell a story about him and Michael Bisping and Rampage Jackson almost getting stabbed in a club in London. Got him to tell a story about him getting robbed by the Russian mafia and then getting arrested in Latvia after he attacked some guy's car. This is everything. This interview is everything except tell me about jiu-jitsu and, what does jiu-jitsu mean? I'm like, look, dude, that's not what kind of interviews we do. Tell me about a time when you've actually used, you're a multi-time Abu Dhabi world champion. Have you ever gone full throttle on a guy? You ever actually tried to hurt someone? That's what we want to talk about on this channel. So that is coming, I promise. I just, and this weekend I'm actually going out of town. So, filming will actually probably be harder than normal. So maybe that'll be what I do and you guys will get the Dean Lister interview. But I'm probably going to actually cut together a trailer and then release it just because this is one of those things, I've seen people do that before. Where, I'm trying to obviously grow the channel. It's only been up for 3 months, where I'm actually consistently doing this. And I've seen people do that where they release a trailer and it's like, oh, subscribe to the channel. And then you can know when this entire video actually comes out because it's that good. It's that good. I was literally talking to him just oh my God. So you felt his entire shoulder, elbow, and arm just crumble like dust? Oh, and then they were waiting outside for you with AK-47s? Geez, I'm sure no one will want to hear this story. Oh, man, it's so good. Anyway, all right, so subscribe, ring the bell. I will, I'm going to put that up at some point. Love you guys. Thank you for this.